Welcome to the Trade with Africa show. We're live. My name is Toyin Umasiri, and I'm super excited to have you here today. So if you're here, just, feel free to put a comment, like, share with your friends. And I'm just super excited that we're here having the first episode of the Trade with Africa live show. Wow, it's been a journey for me personally, and this show by itself is an extension of an existing annual trade event that we have called the Trade with Africa Business Summit. So this is the first episode. It's every week on Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 Central Time. That's 11 a.m. to 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. So basically, what I would love to use this opportunity to do is to share with you a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of resources that could help you on your own journey. But for this first episode, I really do want to just lay a solid foundation. So today we'll be covering why Africa, why now, what are the opportunities, how can you engage, and what do we at Nazaru LLC, what can we provide to you to help you on your journey? So grab your coffee, water, whatever it is, and let's go. For me personally, Trade with Africa was a journey I embarked on a couple of years ago. Looking at the numbers, you begin to wonder, Africa, wow, trade, is there a connection there? And one thing that I actually realized was that Africa, the last 20, 30 years, was made to be synonymous with war, famine, and disease. So if you were to pick people off the street and say, Africa, what comes to your mind? People will probably go, well, hungry, war. But when you start digging deeper, you realize that it's not that story is not all true, but reality is it's highly imbalanced, meaning because the second side of the coin, the commercial activities going on, corporate Africa, as I would coin it, the story of corporate Africa is yet to be told, really. It's not covered at all. So all of a sudden people are their mind is wrapped up with half truths. So what we do with Trade with Africa is primarily focused on commercial opportunities on the continent. It's focused on US-Africa trade. What are the opportunities? Entrepreneurship, innovation, agriculture, manufacturing. So for us, we try to stay within that space of business, commercial engagement. And really, Africa has always been about trade. The only problem we have is that the story of Trade with Africa hasn't seen, coverage, especially in the Western side. So what do you think about that? Let's see. Thank you, Caroline. I see you. Thanks for your comment. I appreciate that. So I would really love for this live show to be as interactive as possible. In fact, in my opinion, you get to decide the direction, I'll be taking this show. The reason is because we are involved, I'm involved in a whole lot of conversation, a whole lot of topics that crosses a lot of range. But I really do want to know the people on my page, the people on our company, people following us, what do you really want to see? What are the gaps that you see? What information do you need? What are you trying to accomplish that we can help, that I can help, help you close that gap or help you make that connection or follow the dots. So for me, this show is making ourselves available and saying, okay, what are you trying to do? And let's see if we can be of service to you and help you on that journey. So you watching, you get to decide how this show evolves over time. So thank you again, Caroline. So at the end of the show as well, I'll be taking questions. So if you join midstream, please feel free to drop a comment or drop your questions, and then I'll be able to get to it. But if I'm not able to get to it during the show, don't worry. Even afterwards, I'll make sure to keep looking at the questions and keep responding. And also, there are some questions I might be able to answer and address next week, because again, we're going to be doing this every week. So great. on that note, I also want to make sure, how are you coping with COVID-19? Like within your space, how are you managing? Hope you're staying safe. That has completely changed the world that we live in, no doubt. But I also want to encourage you to, put one leg in front of the other. Sometimes you might not be able to run, you might not be able to make a fast pace, but don't stop. Don't stop in your tracks. Don't be frozen in space, in place. As much as you can, try and make daily incremental steps, in whatever you're trying to do, because before you know it, hopefully, knock on wood, it's over, right? That's what we all are praying for. And we do know that the world may not be the same after COVID-19. In fact, I'm not going to be the same as an individual because of the things I've learned, how I've grown in this space. So just to put that out there, just to acknowledge that I know things are kind of, in flux right now with COVID-19, but I want you to be committed to your own personal journey. There are great resources out there that can help you as well. So hang in there. We're in this together. Going back to Trade with Africa, there's a lot of conversation around foreign aid, right? Aid to the nations, the 55 nations. But we also know that in order to drive trade, there are different conversations that we have to have. The reason is because when we are talking to investors and business executives, there are just two parallel worlds that do not collide most of the time. The world of foreign aid with charities and, trade development organizations and all of that. And the world of business, commerce. The language we talk about in the world of business has to do with return on investment, how do we evaluate, future yield, things like that. So what we found is that the data points that business executives are looking for in order to engage on the continent, the data point is buried somewhere. I wouldn't say it doesn't exist. I would say the data points, they're buried somewhere. So transparency and visibility to data, especially on commercial opportunities, needs to be brought into the business world. That's one. The second thing that we found is Africa has been, a lot of political conversations has happened around Africa in Washington, D.C., in, political headquarters around the world. But when we start talking about trade opportunities, it's actually businessmen and women that can actually trade. So what we have found is that we've had to bring that conversation to say, yes, well, there's policy involved, there are trade agreements involved. Yes, but once you get that right, how are we engaging the business side of things? How are we educating them? How are we informing them? How are we engaging them in making sure that the trade that we're talking about doesn't just stay on paper, right? But it's actually being executed. It's actually being, case in point is AGOA. I don't know how many people watching or will watch after this, they're familiar with AGOA. AGOA is African Growth and Opportunity Act that was established by the United States government in the year 2000, so 20 years ago. And pretty much it offers preferential treatment to over 6,000 products to be imported directly from Africa. One of the reasons that was established was because on the surface, when you say, okay, Africa is trying to capture trade opportunity, but guess what? Africa may not be able to compete, price compete, volume compete with China. But if we were to, waive tariff implications, could African exporters still perform? Well, that has been on the books for 20 years, and it's, among experts, it's agreed upon that it's yet to be fully maximized, and it's due to expire in 5 years' time. So think about that. You have an existing policy trade on paper that has existed for 20 years, but the business community, the buyers, the sellers, the exporters, the service providers, the shipping companies, declaring frontline people, declaring people, They probably don't know it exists. So those are the things that we've encountered to say, how do we get this information out? It's going to expire in 5 years. What are the challenges people are facing? So that's just one example. You also have continental agreements, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which I actually also play a strong role on. I'm an ambassador for intra-Africa trade by appointment of the African Union and the African Export-Import Bank. So I also am an advocate for driving intra-Africa trade. When you look at those numbers, you wonder, why are they low, right? Within Africa, and what could we do to improve that? You quickly find out lack of data points are critical. So I'm going to I know I can keep talking on, but I want to check on you guys and see, what do you guys think? Caroline asked, what opportunities do you think we can tap into during this time of the COVID-19? How do we help our agribusiness connect with the world market? Wow. Okay. Like I said before, you all get to decide the direction of this. So I'm going to hold my thought and really respond to this question right now. Number one, COVID-19, with what's going on out there, it's a great opportunity for you to do a lot of research. Okay? Do a lot of research, and we have a lot of information as well. Get yourself armed with skills, knowledge. The other thing you absolutely need is a strong network. Business run at the speed of relationship, right? What we've seen is a lot of people just say we want trade, but they are not willing to step out of their houses, proverbial houses. We can't do that now, but at least engage online, connect with people, get curious. So that's what I would say. Number one, get curious. Number two, do a lot of research. Focus the next 1-2 months on just research, because one of the things that research does for you is you get all that data, and all of a sudden you start seeing trends, and you start seeing, okay, agriculture, what country, what seed, what plants, because if you just pick agriculture, for example, you have to decide where in the value chain do you want to play. Do you want to work with the farmers? What do the farmers need? They need equipment, they need seed, they need technical expertise. That's one, if you want to work directly with the farmers. Okay, if you want to work in the supply chain, you want to look at transportation. When that product is ready, how do you transport it? But guess what? Before you even transport it, right? Think about processing. Do you want to invest in the processing plants? What do so for me, look at the value chain and then decide, where do you want to play? Because there's a whole lot of opportunities along that chain, right? There's the transportation, there's the logistics, there's the sales, there's the branding, there's the marketing, there's the distribution standpoint. And pick any industry, right? So agriculture, that's one. Farm to market. How do you get the product from farm to market? That's something right now you can start researching. And we have a lot of content. Based on our last events, we've had speakers give a lot of resources, a lot of information, and that's something we're happy to share as well. How do we help our agribusiness? I'll tell you, the people on ground, they don't just need your investment, they actually need technical expertise. They do need technical expertise, because a lot of them are far removed from the cities. A lot of the farms, they're just head down, farming the land, pretty much. So I know there are schools also doing some education projects on ground. So think about that as well. I hope that helped. I also see John. Thank you for your comment. I'm reading Trade with Africa is paramount. Absolutely. Looking forward to learning more about the opportunity. Thank you, John. Wow, it's been an incredible journey. And I'll tell you, when we say Africa, why now? When you look at the data, I happen to have a first degree in mathematics, so maybe that's why I keep talking about data. 55 countries, currently at 1,000,000,001 people, okay? And I try to say within media space, 1,000,000,001 people could not be hungry, could not be at war, could not be having famine of some sort. So let's say, okay, that has been covered. The non-functioning side of Africa has its coverage. But when we think about the stock markets, the financing banks, what's going on the continent, you quickly see that there's investments in infrastructure. So infrastructure development, road constructions, buildings, power, it's huge. It's huge now in Africa. So those are places people can play in. You think about education. The education system on the continent now, in my opinion, needs to be revamped. And that's what India did late 70s, early 80s. They took a look at the education system and said, hey, where we're trying to go to 20, 30 years from now, the education system that we have is not going to serve us. And I would really encourage, if you're on the political side and, on the policy side and you're watching this, is education on the continent needs to be revamped and, to support the future of Africa. Because by 2050, Africa is projected to have doubled its population. So while the rest of the world is shrinking in population, the continent is rapidly growing. And what's going to happen is we have the youngest youth workforce. The question is, how productive would that group, right, the next 20 years, the youth of today and the youth that will be born in the next 20 years, how productive are they going to be? So human capital development is something that also has to be looked into, even as an investment. So schools, education, project management, all of those skill sets is what Africa is going to need as it's moving in the direction that where it wants to get to.